Well, welcome to another edition. Welcome to another edition of E.W. Jackson for America. I was not on with you yesterday live because I flew down to Lancaster, South Carolina for a wonderful day trip to Nutramax, the company Nutramax. I don't know whether you've heard of Nutramax before, but I was approached by this family, the owners of Nutramax, after they heard me speak out in Missouri, actually, out at I guess Grace Church in Missouri, and they had family members out there who made them aware of me, and they saw the sermon and wanted me to come speak to their company. They got about 800 employees down in Lancaster, and they brought me down to speak to their company and to meet them and talk to them. And I'll tell you, folks, it was a wonderful, wonderful trip. Here, as a matter of fact, this is one of the little gifts I got. This is the bag, the Nutramax company, and I don't think I've got any of their products in here. But look, if you are not aware of them, look them up. Google it, Nutramax. I'm pretty sure that the website is Nutramax.com. But by all means, check them out. You know what? Let me see here. By all means, check them out. Nutramax, Nutramax. And I'm pretty sure it's Nutramax.com. First of all, they are a Christian company. And I'll tell you, folks, it was just really gratifying to see a company that's dedicated to God. Because, of course, I speak mainly at churches and ministries and rarely at companies. But to see a company that is really dedicated to a business that glorifies God is really a wonderful thing. It really was. I was able to see their plant, to see their facility, to tour it. In fact, I think we had about an hour and a half tour. It's a very, very big facility down there, by the way. I think they're the largest employer in Lancaster, South Carolina. And in many ways, they are a foundation of support for that community. But they are Christian people who love God, and that's the first and foremost thing about them that jumps out at me. By the way, you probably don't know this, because I certainly didn't know it, wouldn't have had any reason to know it. But the founders of the company, particularly Dr. Bob Henderson, he is the patent holder for glucosamine chondroitin. That is his invention. That's his patent. Now, of course, a lot of companies are doing something similar, but that originated with him and with this company. I didn't know that. Because, of course, you can go buy glucosamine chondroitin from all kinds of brands now. But the original patent came from Dr. Robert Henderson, the founder of Nutramax. And so, I mean, I presume that a lot of people who are using that formula, of course, are licensed by them to use it. But if you want to go to the originators of that product, go to Nutramax. My wife and I are going to start taking Nutramax products because, of course, we got a full tour of all that they go through to make sure that their products are quality. And they did explain to us, as I'm a big supplement taker. In fact, I got some supplements right here. As soon as the program is over, that's them. I've got a vitamin regimen I take in the morning. As soon as the program is over, I'll finish taking my morning vitamins. But I'm going to start including their glucosamine chondroitin product in it, because I've been taking turmeric with black pepper and that kind of thing. And I may continue to take that, but I'm going to start taking their product, because I figure the people who invented it, the people who created it, they know what they're doing. And they were explaining, too, that because they're not bound by FDA regulations, because they're kind of between a food and a pharmaceutical. They're really not food and they're not a pharmaceutical, that the regulations tend to be very lax. And they say you have to depend upon the company to set very, very high standards. And they've set standards above what the FDA would require if they were a pharmaceutical company. That's how serious they are about it. They got laboratories and they're doing research. It's a major operation. And so I'm going to start taking their products. By the way, I'm not getting paid for this. This is not any kind of paid commercial. I'm just telling you, I'm excited about it because here's the other thing that I want to tell you about. Most of their business is with animals, because what they found out was, what Dr. Bob found out was early on, was that the product is as effective and in some ways more effective on animals than it is on human beings. And they just got remarkable results with dogs and horses and other kinds of animals. I mean, now their product is sold in zoos, and it's with all kinds of animals. This stuff is being used. I mean, tigers and elephants and you name it, because it has such a remarkable impact on the joint health of animals. I mean, think about racehorses and the pounding on their joints. Well, a lot of these racehorses are being given glucosamine chondroitin because it helps maintain the animal's joint health. They say dogs that were, just really in bad shape, see them come back and begin to play and move because they get their joints back. So if you are a pet owner, and I'm not a pet owner, I do love dogs, but I travel too much. My wife and I, well, of course, I would like to have a dog, but I'm gone too much really to feel good about that possibility, because I think, animals are like children in this sense. A dog is like a child in this sense. I mean, you gotta spend time with them. You gotta give them attention. You gotta train them. You gotta bond with them. And you can't do that if you're gone half the time. So one of these days, though, we'll see what the Lord has in mind. But for those of you who are pet owners, if your pet is having any kind of difficulties with joints, or the pet is aging, my son, by the way, my son and daughter-in-law, they have 3 dogs. They're dog lovers too, and they have 3 dogs. And so we're going to send them some of this product and have them. One of them is older and is getting to that point where he doesn't move as well. So we're going to see how this works to help him. But in fact, again, 90% of their business is to veterinarians because the product is so effective with animals. So it was really an exciting day and a wonderful opportunity to meet some really, really good people. So I just encourage you, if you don't know anything about them, never heard of them before, as I had not, check them out. And by the way, they are definitely allies in the battle to save this country. I mean, would they have me come speak if they weren't? Yeah, I don't get invitations from people who have me come speak who are not committed to trying to save America, trying to call America back to its founding principles and back to faith in God. Because people who are not interested in that don't like me. Okay? And they heard me and said, we've got to have him come. And they did, and I had a wonderful time. So let's be praying for them and for their continued success, and be praying that the Lord will use them and other businesses, other Christian business people. I think we should really follow their model and dedicate their businesses to the glory of God. And, they say, unlike other businesses, we earn a profit, but that's secondary. Our first and foremost mission is to serve God and serve people, and we let the money take care of itself. Wow. And by the way, it's worked. It has worked. They are tremendously successful. So praise God for them. And I just wanted to recommend you to them. Like I said, it's not a paid commercial, but I'm just excited that they exist. And now I'm praying and believing God that of course, there are others out there. I mean, my friend Art Alley, who owns the Timothy Plan, which is, of course, a mutual fund. And there are a bunch of Christian financial counselors all around the country who are dedicated to helping people be good stewards of what God has given them. So I know there are others, probably not enough, but there are others, and praise God for them. So, all right, here's the first thing I want to talk about aside from that is the shooting that happened in I think they call it Appalachia, Georgia, yesterday. 14-year-old killed 4 people, 2 students and 2 teachers, 2 faculty. Very sad situation, and our hearts go out to the people who've experienced that. And that's the first thing. Let's be praying for those families, for that school district, and all the people who are profoundly affected when a tragedy like this happens. What can you say? Except God give them comfort, give them peace, strengthen them through this tragedy. You know, I began my message yesterday at Nutrimax talking to a couple hundred of their employees by saying, everybody has problems. It is unavoidable in this life. And anybody who thinks that anybody, anywhere is teaching, and if they are teaching this, there's something wrong with them, that if you are a Christian or if you have faith in God, you shouldn't have any problems. That's insane. That is such theological and biblical malpractice to tell people nonsense like that. In fact, at times when you're seeking to do something for God, you're going to have more problems, not less, but more, because the devil's going to attack you, and you're going to face all the resistance that the world can throw at you to stop you from doing what God has for you to do. So this idea, well, you know, if you're a Christian, you shouldn't be having these problems. Now, don't get me wrong. We can bring problems on ourselves. We can have self-inflicted wounds by doing things that we know God would not have us do and creating problems for ourselves. Even there, God's grace and his love and his mercy and his patience and his kindness will see you through even that. I know. I've been there. God is so good. But you're not getting through this life without problems, even if you don't do anything to try to create problems for yourself, or to create problems for yourself. In other words, committing sin and getting involved in things you got no business getting involved in, or saying or doing things you got no business doing that end up getting you into trouble. Leaving that aside for the moment, you're still going to have problems. It is inevitable. Because the devil goes about like a roaring lion, seeking whom he may devour, whom we were supposed to resist steadfast in the faith. And because he steals, kills, and destroys, that's his raison d'etre, that's his stock in trade, that's what he does. He's a liar and a murderer. Sadly, we're going to be affected by these things. So we just need to gird ourselves with strength and be strong in the Lord and in the power of his might. And when these things happen, just say, Lord, I am not quitting. It always amazes me when things like this happen and people blame God. Oh, well, why? If God is good, why does he allow? I just have so little patience with that. Because the fact of the matter is, God has given mankind freedom. He does not treat us like robots. We are free, and that freedom involves the freedom to sin. It's a stupid way to use one's freedom, but people do it. I mean, right? Why didn't he build a high fence around the tree of the knowledge of good and evil and tell Adam and Eve, if I catch you anywhere near it, I'm going to slap you off that fence? I mean, they walked right up to it and ate. He told them not to, but they ignored him and did it anyway. It's not God's fault when these things happen. It's not what God allowed. Why did God allow? God gave us freedom. And he's not running around like an ambulance chaser. Every time somebody's about to do something, God steps in. Now, there is no doubt that when we invite God to intervene in our lives, we invite God to help us, he steps in and helps us. But remember something. Here's the one thing God will not do. Okay? He will not do as a general proposition. Now, there are exceptions to this. I'm not trying to hedge here, but there are exceptions. But here's one thing God will not do. God will not violate the freedom and sovereignty of a human being and force them to do what they don't want to do or stop them from doing what they want to do. He just won't do it. Now, I said there are exceptions. You know what the exceptions are? Where he's protecting one of his children or protecting his plan or his purpose, and something that somebody might do is going to interfere with that, and God steps in to short circuit that so that his plans and purposes will not be frustrated in a particular instance. But those are exceptions. That's not the rule. Because if that were the rule, everybody who's about to get robbed today, and all over this nation, people will get robbed today, many of them at gunpoint, because it's just the nature of the world we live in. God would step in and knock the gun out of everybody's hand, knock the knife out of everybody's hand, have the police right there to arrest the person. But that's not what he does. What he does is say to the robber, say to the thief, say to the murderer, don't do it. Don't do it. In 1,000 different ways he will say it. Don't do it. But people won't listen to him. So when you and I commit ourselves to him, and we say, Lord, I don't see the problem around the corner, but you do. Guide me around it. Lord, I don't know everybody who has bad intentions toward me, but you do. Protect me from them. We invite God to intervene, to step into our lives, to be actively engaged with us, to help us. He will do that because he's not violating your will. He's not violating your sovereignty. He has been invited in. Because if it didn't work that way, God would just have everybody be saved and have everybody know and love him. But it just doesn't work that way. You've got to choose yourself. You've got to exercise your sovereign will. And that sovereignty, by the way, we know it's not absolute. It's not infinite. But we do have a level of sovereignty and freedom of will in this life that God has granted to us. And as a general proposition, he will not violate that. So I just want to get that out of the way for people who, well, why would God? I mean, it has nothing to do with God. And God has nothing to do with it. You know, God is the one who steps in and comforts people in their bereavement and helps people through moments of crisis like this. And God is the one who steps in and says to others who might be thinking about this is the horror that such thinking will bring on. So people who might be inclined towards such evil, God is the one who is tapping them on the shoulder and saying, don't do it. Don't do it. But any one of us, any of you watching me right now, could get up at this very moment and go out and do something heinous. If you wanted to, God would not stop you. He's told you not to. He's given you commandments, but he would not stop you. Okay. So let's not blame God, okay? Let's blame who deserves the blame, the devil. Now, there are a couple of other things as to this that we really do need to touch on because, folks, this gets us into some very, very dangerous waters. Every time one of these shootings happens, the left takes this as an opportunity to start talking about confiscation of guns, restricting the Second Amendment, and all of that. Here's the first issue that comes up. I am a gun enthusiast. I own multiple weapons. I enjoy firearms. But every single firearm owner who understands we have God-given right to self-defense and therefore a God-given right to keep and bear arms, we also have a God-given responsibility to deal to deal with those arms with safety, your own and the safety of others in mind. I said when my children were young, now my wife and I have no children in the home, so I mean, to be very honest, and unless people are coming, there's no telling where you're liable to find a gun laying. Now, if we're going out, I put my guns away. But if I'm at home, I tend to carry pretty much wherever I go. If I'm at home, I'm going to take my gun out, lay it somewhere. Now, because we have people coming into the home to do various repairs and this kind of thing, I tend to put them away simply because I don't want to forget and have somebody walk in and see it, and I don't want to have somebody walk in who I don't know and have access to it, okay? So, but if I'm going away, I lock my guns in the safe. When my children were young, I didn't have as many guns as I have now, in part because I had young children in the home, but still had firearms. I would lock the firearm when I was not in the home, and of course, carrying in Massachusetts was really an iffy proposition, but I did get to a point where I started carrying in Massachusetts. But when I came home, or when I was not going to be carrying my firearm, the firearm was locked. I would have a lock around the trigger mechanism. I would put the firearms into a lock box. Only I had the key to it. And then I would hide the lockbox. So in order for my children to get to a firearm, first of all, they had to find them. Secondly, they would have to go through a tremendous amount of effort to try to get that box open, assuming they could do it. And of course you could do it, but highly unlikely. If you got the box open, now you've got the problem of having locks on the trigger mechanism, so you still couldn't use it. And then the ammunition was kept separate from the fire. In other words, I didn't ever want to come home and find out that one of my children had got a hold of my firearm and did some heinous thing by accident, kids being kids. Now, to me, every person who believes in the Second Amendment and believes in the right to keep and bear arms and believes it's really none of the government's business, you need to remember the principle of self-governance, right? That we govern ourselves. I don't need the government to tell me what to do because I know what to do. And I know what my responsibility is. So the question is, and we don't know yet, they're not even giving the news. The kid's name is Gray, apparently. Somebody let it slip out. But outlets apparently are not announcing the name, at least most of them don't seem to be, and I don't quite understand that because they're giving us the names of the victims, and his name has really already slipped out, so I'm not sure what the point of that is. I mean, he's a 14-year-old kid, but he's going to be tried as an adult. There's no question about it. The laws of Georgia allowed him to be tried as an adult. I think it's starting at the age of 13 years old. So it raises the question, how in the world did he get his hands on an AR? Said he had an AR platform type weapon. I don't know whether it's an AR-15 or not, but he had an AR platform type weapon. How did he get his hands on it? I mean, how could that happen? And I don't want to just point the finger at the parents because we don't know. I mean, maybe it came from some other source. But if this kid with clearly mental problems, emotional problems, well, how do we know? They said the FBI interviewed him a year ago because of tips that they got that this kid was plotting a shooting at his school. They interviewed the kid. I mean, so the parents had to know that, right? They interviewed the kid. They said they had no probable cause to arrest him So they had to let it go, but he was on their radar. He was being watched, or whatever that means. Well, obviously they weren't watching him too closely, were they? Because somehow he managed to get out of his house and get to his school with an AR. And that's no little weapon. I mean, if you're being watched, if you're on their radar, as they put it, man, I don't know what kind of radar they were using. See, and this is the ultimate point I want to make here. Look, we don't need more laws restricting the rights of free citizens to keep and bear arms, of law-abiding citizens to keep and bear arms. We don't need that. Virginia's already passed the law. I mean, I've got a gun that I want to pass on to a relative. And I began to review the laws in Virginia. And you know, Virginia now, you are not allowed to sell a weapon to a close friend. It has to be, quote unquote, an immediate family member to give or sell a weapon to an immediate family member without a background check. I don't really need the government to tell me to make those decisions for me. I mean, I'm supposed to exercise my prudential judgment and look and bear the consequences if I'm stupid about it. My prudential judgment is this a person I really want to get involved with in that I really want to transfer a firearm to? Is this a person I think I can trust to know how to use a firearm with safety? I mean, I can make that decision. And I think any responsible adult can. But no. The government will make it for you. Just chipping away at your freedom, chipping away at your liberty. John Adams said, our Constitution was designed for a moral and religious people. It is wholly inadequate to the governance of any other. Because the hand of government in our lives is supposed to be light, not heavy. Because we are responsible ourselves for using our reason and using our moral vision and understanding to do things that we know are going to be right and good and safe and helpful, and to avoid those things that we know are going to be evil and wicked and maybe wreak havoc or cause the loss of lives. Government, when the government gets to the point where it's got to regulate every aspect of your life, there's a word for that. It's called tyranny. Or totalitarianism, communism, Marxism, socialism. And fascism is nothing but an outgrowth of communism. People like to make fascism some separate thing. But it's not. Fascism is nothing but another permutation of communism. Because Mussolini was a communist before he was a fascist. And Adolf Hitler was part of the German Workers' Party, a left-wing group, before he became the fascist dictator of Germany. They're all on the same spectrum, folks. There's really not a dime's worth of difference. All of them are the same thing: tyrannical government, controlling everything and everybody. And that's where we're going. If we don't get a handle on this, and if we don't elect the right people, which means certainly not electing Comrade Kamala and her communist, Chinese communist comrade, what's the right way to refer to him? Because this guy spent almost more time in China than he has in America. Well, that's a slight exaggeration, but you get my point. I mean, 30 visits to China? During his honeymoon, during the anniversary of Tiananmen Square incident? I mean, what? Something's wrong. But at any rate, where did he get an AR? But here's the other aspect of this that I don't want to let slip. And then I'm going to say a couple of other things about this upcoming election, as you know, because that's very much preoccupying my thinking. When are we going to realize that what we must do is enforce the laws we have on the books? Now, I don't know what in the world made law enforcement think, well, he's on the radar, we're watching him. I don't know what made them think that that was adequate, but and based on all these tips, this kid was clearly making terrorist threats. Now, in hindsight, we see that, and making a terrorist threat is illegal. You can't make a terrorist threat. You can't do that. That's a crime. If somebody says, "Oh, well, you know what? I'm going to go just pick an institution. I'm going to go shoot up the post office and kill as many people as I can." Well, that's illegal. That's not protected speech. That's illegal. That's a terrorist threat. How in the world so many people knew to give tips to law enforcement and the FBI, and law enforcement couldn't figure it out? I don't know. But and you all know I'm a big supporter of law enforcement. I will say this: we need to enforce the laws that are on the books. We don't need more laws. We don't need more restrictions on law-abiding citizens. We need to crack down on the criminals. Now, if the people are arrested for firearms violations and they right back out on the street, and yet we say, "Oh, guns are the scourge," and you want to come after my guns, which have never been used to do anything illegal, because I've never engaged in illegal activity. So, but no. We're going to confiscate your AR. We're going to confiscate your semi-automatic weapons because you're the threat. No, I'm not. Neither is the law-abiding citizen and the owners of 300 million AR-15s. I believe there are about 300 million AR-15s in circulation in America right now, owned mostly by law-abiding citizens like me, like my son, like others. Enforce the laws that we have. I mean, a 14-year-old shouldn't be having an AR. That's illegal. He's not of the age of majority and responsibility to allow him to have that dangerous weapon. It is a dangerous weapon. Operated by someone who understands the rules of safety and understands the gravity of what you're dealing with, it's not a problem. But in the hands of some kid who's already emotionally distraught or imbalanced or mentally ill, it becomes a ticking time bomb. That's how in the world does this happen? That's the question to me that it raises. How in the world does this happen? Now, I hope we get to the bottom of all that and get all the facts with regard to that, because right now they don't seem to be very forthcoming about any of it. But I'm sure in time we will find out more. Whether the parents are in any way liable because maybe they negligently allowed this kid access to these weapons when he was already red flagged. Again, when the FBI knocks on your door and says, "We want to talk to your kid," he was then 13 years old, about making terrorist threats. That's the time to say, "Johnny, you will not have access to the firearms, okay? They will be put away." And you do then whatever you need to do to make sure that that is the case. Until you are absolutely reassured, maybe that you can lower the level of security because you got a responsible kid on your hands who understands the gravity of whatever stupid thing he said or did before and how it could land him in prison. And how you don't talk that way, you don't think that way, you're not interested in hurting human beings, period. So let's enforce the laws we have on the books instead of creating this nonsense of gun hysteria. We got to get the guns out of the hands of the people. No. First of all, it's never going to happen. Okay. Secondly, it is illegal to try to do something like that because the Constitution still says the right to keep and bear arms shall not be infringed. I mean, that's about as plain as it gets. Well, I don't have time to do it now, but what I'm going to do, and maybe I'll do it tomorrow, I was going to run through, I've come up with 19, maybe 20 very, very dramatic and dangerous things that will happen to undermine our constitutional republic if Kamala Harris and Tim Walz get elected. And you know what was on the top of my list? Gun confiscation. Gun confiscation. Because, you know, she has proposed what she calls a buyback program. It's not a buyback program. It's a mandatory surrender of your firearms with compensation for the value of those firearms. It's not buyback. It's seizing your property and saying, well, here, since we've seized your property, I mean, it's like eminent domain. We're taking your property. We'll give you what we think it's worth. It's not a voluntary buyback where you say, well, you know what? I don't want this firearm. I'm going to go down here and I'll sell it back to the government. No. She's talking about confiscation. And of course, we don't need weapons of warfare on the streets. Well, folks, I was trained in the Marine Corps on an M16, M17, and then on a 45, a 1911. Was a 1911 a weapon of warfare? I suppose it is when you look at it in that context. Well, any weapon is a weapon of warfare. Any weapon. Because any weapon allows you to harm another human being or kill another human being. Any weapon can be used in warfare. But that's propaganda to make people, oh, yeah, that's right. We certainly don't need weapons of warfare in people's hands. Well, we're not talking about a bazooka. We're not talking about a nuclear weapon. We're talking about a firearm that's been used now for what? A couple hundred years at least. It's how the West was won. So, we can't elect people who have as their top priority, or among their top priorities, the violation of our Second Amendment liberties. We can't have it, folks. We can't have it. Again, I said I got 19 or 20. I'm not sure whether I landed with 19 or 20. But that was the very top of my list. Because it's real and it's stark and it's an obvious violation of our constitutional liberties, but that's where they want to go. Confiscate your firearms. Because once they start with say an AR type weapon, because that's an assault weapon. Again, well, any weapon is an assault weapon. I mean, is a dagger an assault weapon with a guard on it? Sure. You've had knife attacks where multiple numbers of people have been killed in a knife attack. So a mass attack where you kill 5, 10, or injure 5, 10, 15, 20 people in a knife attack. It happens. Is that an assault weapon? Is it a weapon of warfare? So what do we need? Knife control? A truck. Remember the truck that was used? I think this might have been in France, but where I forget the numbers of people that were injured and killed, but it was terrible. So we truck control down? It's not the instrument. It's what's in the heart of the person who turns the instrument against others. But we know, any person with common sense knows that. But Comrade Kamala and her little communist buddy are not interested in creating public safety. They're interested in creating government control. That's the point. The point is to control you, to make sure that you understand you are subservient, that you are the vassal of the government. And the government will dictate what you can and cannot have. And that's just where it starts. So if you start with the AR, what's next? What's next? Because I've talked about, some firearms. I mean, the Beretta 92, for example, I think it holds 17 rounds in the clip and one in the chamber. It might be 18 rounds in the clip and one in the chamber, maybe 19 rounds. Is that a weapon of warfare? That's been used in the military too. But Beretta is a beautiful weapon. They're very, very well made. A lot of fun to shoot at the target range. Smooth action. But the American citizen should not be able to own it because it's got a clip that holds 18 rounds. What difference does that make if all that's ever been pointed at is a paper target? And other than unless it's been used in a self-defense situation where it's been pointed at someone else. So I've been familiar with firearms and been dealing with firearms since I was a kid, because my father had a couple guns, but it really began when I was in the Marine Corps, and I have never in my life ever. So I've been, let's call it 50 years, easy, probably more like 55, that I've become familiar with firearms. No firearms. I've had firearms training. I've had tactical training in the use of firearms. I've never pointed a gun at any human being ever. Ever. Not as a joke, not as a ruse, certainly not in anger or not in a threat. Ever. Ever. And hope I never have to. Because the only way I can imagine having to do so is if I feel that my life is under threat and I have to point a weapon at someone in order to defend my life or the life of someone I love, or the life of an innocent human being, let's put it that way, because I would defend the life of an innocent human being even if I didn't know that person and I felt like I had to. But I've never had to do it because I'm a law-abiding citizen and I know firearms are no joke. You don't play around like that. But these people are not interested in your responsible action or mine. They're interested in taking control of us. That's why we cannot possibly allow these people to become president and vice president of the United States of America. It would be one of the worst things to ever happen in our country. Let me underscore as I prepare to go. And folks, again, I don't say this for dramatic effect. I say this because I really believe this is an accurate description of the situation. And people can certainly debate me on it and tell me where they think I'm wrong. I am convinced that Kamala Harris and Tim Walz are communists. That they are communists. Now, with a small c, they don't belong to the Communist Party. You know, you're not going to find a card in their wallets or in her pocketbook that says, communist member of. No. But in their thinking and in their hearts, they are Marxists, they are collectivists, they are socialists, they are communists. They really think that's a better way of conducting government and the affairs of society than liberty. These people don't understand that we are a constitutional republic, and they don't care because they don't think it's a good thing. That's why Walz has spent so much time in China, because he loves their system. He wants the same system for us. No, they're never going to say that. But you look at all their actions and all their behavior, and it tells you, it's quite obvious that that's where they want us to go. They don't like Judeo-Christian values. They don't like liberty as we understand it. They like tyranny and totalitarianism. So we've got to vote these folks out. We've got to vote them out, folks. I don't know when early voting starts in your particular state. This is a state matter. But I would urge you, get out there and vote early so you can be working the polls on election day. And I know some people don't like early voting. I don't either. But it's what we've got. Make the most of it. And then get active at those polls. Like I said, not only as volunteer poll watchers, but get inside those polls and become part of the election process and watch it like a hawk. Because I'm telling you, you know this, if these people can cheat their way to victory, they will do it. Because they don't have the same moral compunctions that you and I have. I would not cheat my way to victory. Because I know that can never be pleasing to God. And if God can't bless what you're doing, you're in trouble anyway. But they don't care about God, and they don't care about you, and they don't care about me, and they don't care about the Constitution. They don't care about the integrity of elections. They care about getting and keeping power, and they'll do anything they think they need to do to get it and keep it. And we've got to stop them. Not with bullets, but with ballots. We've got to get actively engaged and involved and make sure that they cannot steal this election. Look, Stand is going to have several election experts on during the month of October. We've already got Ken Blackwell coming on one of those months. Ken Blackwell is an election expert. We're looking to have a few others on. My good friend Christian Adams, who's got an election integrity project where he goes around and just investigates who's on the voter polls. And of course, it found in various places, including Virginia, a bunch of illegal immigrants on the voter rolls. That's not by accident, folks. That's intentional. And when you say you don't have to have an ID to vote, what they're really saying is we want illegal immigrants voting in these elections. We want them voting for us, and we don't care whether they have a right to vote or whether they're legal voters or not. We'll take them. And you can't ask for an ID or ask for immigration status in order for that person to be able to vote. There's only one reason why they don't want these restrictions, folks. It's because they want to cheat. Because they're really just common sense things. Well, I've got to go. But I told you all a while ago, we went out and bought a washing machine. I think it was a washing machine a few years ago. And before we bought the washing machine, the person said, well, I need to see your license. I said, really? Really? Why? Well, because we want to make sure that the person buying this and the address that you have are the same. You know, there are people who buy things on other people's credit cards and then have things sent. I mean, it's a standard procedure. Yeah, we need to verify who you are before we send a major appliance to your home. I'm thinking, I need an ID to buy a washing machine, but the left says you don't need an ID to vote. Why would that be? Of course, I was happy to show you. Sure, here we go. No problem, because I'm not engaged in anything wrong, nefarious. Same thing at the polls. Somebody said, can I see your ID? Sure, absolutely. There you go. Who doesn't want to show their ID when voting? People who are up to no good, that's who. And what party doesn't want to have to show IDs before the vote? The party that wants to cheat and feels like IDs will get in the way. Folks, get engaged. Get involved fully and completely and totally. You've only got, let's see, when I was on with you last time, exactly 2 months, I think it was 63 days. So here we are 2 days later, right? So 61 days to the election. Or 2 months, not exactly 30 days, but 2 months from Tuesday. We are counting down now. This is it. This is for all the marbles, folks. Let's look. Whatever the outcome, and I'm believing God for Trump to be elected, but whatever the outcome, and I'm going to be working toward that, by the way, too. Whatever the outcome, don't leave yourself in a position to say, I wish I had done this. I wish I had done that. I wish. No, do it. Do it. So you can say, well, Lord, I did everything I knew to do to help affect the outcome of this election. I guess it wasn't enough, but I can't think of anything more that I could have, should have, thought of to do, but I didn't do, that may well have made the difference. In other words, don't leave anything in the ring. Put it all on the line. Okay? I said give. Go to our website, standamericapac.us, and give toward our Save America, Elect Donald Trump campaign. Well, folks, that's going to do it. I'm over time. Oh, my goodness. I'm way over time. Forgive me. Stand up, step up, speak up, refuse to back up, because we cannot be defeated if we will not quit, because we are on God's side. God bless everybody.